Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Good evening. This is Keisha Rogers, and I'll be hosting tonight's discussion. I want to welcome you to the LaRouche PAC weekly class series for our Saturday classes that we hold every week to discuss areas of culture, political statesmanship, the Republic, and to really dig deeper into some of the most profound ideas shaping our history, our Republic, and shaping what we need to understand about what it takes to restore the true nation state idea of our constitutional republic, of our Declaration of Independence, and historic figures that have helped to shape that. And that's why I'm really excited to be joined by Tony Papper tonight, who's going to dig into the question of the meaning and bond between Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and the American people. And I think the more people understand how that bond has been shaped, why President Trump is so important today to restore in our republic, with the understanding of a movement emerging within the American population. And Tony's going to really dig into this question of the history of Western culture and the Western culture's contributions to the United States Constitution, to the Republic, and look at a very important and historic figure in this context to understand the question of how someone like Charles de Gaulle has played a very critical role as a world historic leader in understanding how we address the needs for today in the United States. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony now so that he can start to discuss this question of what he's been working on. I know that Charles de Gaulle is a very historic figure that he looks up to and wants to share that with you tonight, and the importance of what we're doing here with LaRouche PAC to give people a sense of this needed cultural transformation for the country today. So Tony, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Thanks so much, Keisha.
One second, please. 1 second.
Sure.
Oh, okay, you got it.
Great. Thanks so much, Keisha. A friend of mine has recently pointed to what Keisha said, the deep emotional bond linking President Trump to the American people. It's emotional, but that doesn't mean it's not real. It's entirely real. It's just as real as and more real than a physical object or anything, or an army or anything of that sort. This emotional bond reflects the character of the Republic, as Keisha said, as the tradition of the Republic has come down to us in Western civilization from Plato, but even before Plato, to at least, even before him, but we clearly trace it back, as did our American founding fathers, trace it back to the Greek lawgiver Solon of the 6th and 7th centuries BC. One of the things Solon said in his poems, he was a poet as well as a statesman and lawgiver, was that, as I said in brief in the email we sent for this class, he said that the sickness of the Republic expresses itself in every home, in every family, in every personal relationship, in every workplace. And there was no way you can get away from it. He said in poetry, if you try to escape home to get away from it, it'll jump over your garden fence, run into your house, and catch you even in the innermost room. So, this is our situation today. our republic is sick. Our republic is terribly diseased. And this disease affects every one of us, every moment of the day, every personal relationship, every word we say. I mean, none of us can escape the fact that our fellow citizens were being struck down by fentanyl, coming over an open border at the rate of 9 every hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 56 weeks a year, already in 2021. And today, the wide open border, ever wider opened by Biden, we know far more Americans are dying of these drugs. Crime is hitting us in every city and in the countryside. The effects of unlimited immigration of penniless people from third world countries who we don't know who they are, brought in by criminal gangs. This is affecting everybody who's trying to get a job in any area, who's trying to earn a living. The wreckage of the United States industry, the shutdown of our industry, the shutdown to a large extent of our agriculture, has resulted in an economic situation where young people can't afford to have families. On the one hand, this deep emotional bond with Donald Trump reflects the fact, as I say, that in each of our lives, every day and every minute of every day, there's no way we can flee, as Solon wrote, from the diseased condition of the state. Now, that's one aspect of it. The other, and the one I'm going to concentrate much more on today, is the fact that one individual person can be within himself the expression of the republic. In effect, an individual can be the republic, the hope of the republic, the hope of the future of Americans, a single individual. I mean, people may wish to deny it. You may think it's against our Constitution, it's against our character. And, it's justly that people speak of a government of laws and not of men. The republic is bigger than any one man. The Constitution is not a man, but a constitution. All this is true as far as it goes. But it's nevertheless the case that, and it's just the truth. You may like it, you may not like it, but it's the truth that one man or woman can bear within himself the entire future of the republic, and in this case, the United States. But rather than talk about the United States, I'm going to talk about France, 1940. Now, and seeing the situation in France, 1940, and of course, it's different. France is not America. There's so many things are different. Our situation today has no resemblance whatsoever to that of the Second World War. But nevertheless, as Shakespeare did with us, with his plays, if you look at a different phenomenon in a different country, you can perhaps see through different and clearer eyes the situation that's facing us here today as we talk in America. Now, we go back to the spring of 1940, exactly 83 years ago, when in one of the greatest military upsets in known history, France, which was considered by many the strongest country in Europe, was overrun, destroyed, forced to surrender by the Germans after only 6 weeks of war. Nobody could believe this, even the Germans themselves. The military editor of the New York Times, Hanson Baldwin, a well-known figure and not a fool, wrote in 1939, "The French army has long been called by experts the best in the world, and its finest divisions undoubtedly are unmatched." Battle of France began May 10th, 1940, when the Germans overran Belgium and the Netherlands. British and French troops advanced into Belgium and counted on the Ardennes forest to protect their flank as they advanced north into Belgium. They believed that the Ardennes forest was impregnable to heavily armed troops. Nevertheless, under the German Plan Yellow of General von Manstein, German armies were able, tank armies were able to rush through the Ardennes forest, which the French thought was impossible, and cut off the British and French forces to the south. They crossed the Meuse River at Sedan, the scene of another famous French military defeat, and raced all across France, reaching the Atlantic by the 24th of May, completely cutting off British and French armies to the north of them. On May 15th, when the Germans again broke through at Sedan, the French High Command told the government that nothing could stop the Germans from reaching Paris within 24 hours. This is May 15th, after 5 days of war. French Prime Minister Reynaud telegrammed Churchill on the 15th of May, saying, "We are beaten. Last night we lost the battle. The route to Paris is open." He fired the French commander-in-chief, Gamelin, and replaced him with 78-year-old Weygand, who required till May 19th to make it back to Paris from Africa. But the Germans did not attack Paris at that moment. They raced fast past Paris to the English Channel to complete the encirclement and drive the British into the sea at Dunkirk. The French Parliament and the Prime Minister went to Notre Dame Cathedral to pray for a miracle. Charles de Gaulle, who was then a general and a junior minister in the government of Reynaud, met Commander-in-Chief Weygand, the newly hired Commander-in-Chief, on the 8th of June in his headquarters. And Weygand told de Gaulle, "The end has come." This is in de Gaulle's memoirs. De Gaulle said, "The end and the world and the empire," meaning that was what de Gaulle did, that France, even if France was defeated in Europe, France should fight on in her empire against the Germans with the Allies. Commander-in-Chief Weygand replied, "The empire? But that's childish. As for the world, when I've been beaten here, England won't wait a week before pleading for negotiations with the Reich." And then, looking de Gaulle straight in the eye, he said, "If only I were sure the Germans would leave me with enough troops to maintain order." On June 11th, Commander-in-Chief declared Paris an open city as the government fled Paris for Bordeaux. On June 14th, French forces left Paris and the German army marched in the same day. William Shirer, who was in Paris, wrote in his diary for June 17th of a complete breakdown of society, a collapse of the army, of government, and of the morale of the people. It's almost too tremendous to believe. He said that only 700,000 Parisians remained in Paris out of 5 million inhabitants. The rest had joined 6 million French and 2 million Belgian refugees who were desperately trying to go south on the roads. Of the French government at the time, de Gaulle wrote, "In the midst of a prostrate and stupefied nation, behind an army without faith and without hope, the machine of government was turning in irremediable confusion. All that had served as a basis for action belonged only to the past." De Gaulle and Prime Minister Reynaud, as I indicated, proposed removing the government to Algiers to continue the war against Germany from Africa, France's overseas African possessions. De Gaulle wrote, "The government might have reached Algiers, taking with it the treasure of French sovereignty, which for 14 centuries had never been surrendered, continuing the battle." After a long twilight struggle against surrender, Reynaud resigned as prime minister June 16th and was immediately replaced by Marshal Pétain, the hero of World War I, but now the leader of the accommodationists. De Gaulle wrote, "By the light of the thunderbolt, the regime was revealed in its ghastly infirmity as having no proportion and no relation to the defense, honor, and independence of France." De Gaulle said of his friend Reynaud, that he, the prime minister, or the resigned prime minister, that he would have been the right personality to run a war from a state running in the ordinary fashion. But the present crisis would have required striking out at all costs from the ordinary framework and procedure in a situation without precedent. As soon as Reynaud resigned on the 16th, de Gaulle arranged to leave the country for London to try to rally French opposition to surrender. He left at 7 a.m. on June 17th, landing in London after a grueling and dangerous flight. He left his wife and children behind in France to an unknown fate. And as he flew to London, his plane passed over a village in Brittany where his aged mother lay very ill. Looking out the window there, he saw that the forest was all smoking where munition dumps were being destroyed. So de Gaulle landed in London with his aide, Courcelles, and others, but principally his aide. And his aide began phoning the French institutions in London. De Gaulle was a junior minister in the government. Here he was in London. He wanted to make contact with French government institutions, but they were very cautious about talking to him. They were very aware of how the tides had shifted in France in favor of surrender. They weren't sure they wanted to have anything to do with an opponent of the surrender policy, which had taken over the French government. De Gaulle wrote then, "I seemed to myself, alone as I was and deprived of everything, like a man on the shore of an ocean proposing to swim across." Many of the French de Gaulle spoke to wanted to limit the effort to be an aid to the English by individual Frenchmen. But de Gaulle said, "Not for a moment did I look at the enterprise in that way. For me, what had to be served and saved was the nation and the state. For the effort to be worthwhile, what had to be brought back into the war was not merely some Frenchmen, but France." De Gaulle was attacked for his stubbornness, but for him it was not stubbornness, but the fact that he had to stand for France, even if alone. He wrote, "In short, limited and alone though I was, and precisely because I was so, I had to climb to the heights and never come down. He wrote, "I felt within myself a life coming to an end. The life I had lived within the framework of a solid France and an indivisible army. At the age of 49, I was entering upon adventure, like a man thrown by fate outside all terms of reference." Back home in the French National Assembly, 80 deputies had courageously voted against its own self-dissolution. The Assembly voted to dissolve itself in favor and dissolve the French Republic, the Third Republic, in favor of a dictatorship of Philippe Pétain. So 80 deputies had courageously voted not to dissolve the National Assembly, of which they were members, but de Gaulle said not one public man in France had raised his voice to condemn the surrender, called the armistice, but really a surrender. Not one public figure had raised his voice to condemn the surrender. And de Gaulle wrote, "In the face of the frightening void, my mission seemed to me, all of a sudden, clear and terrible. At this moment, the worst in her history, it was for me to assume the burden of France." On June 18th, de Gaulle taped a 4-minute message, which the BBC broadcast into France. And this is what he said. I'm going to read it to you in English. And Keisha has put a link in the chat. And so if you are on a computer and you can get the chat, you can read it there. He said, "The chiefs who have been at the head of the French armies for many years have formed a government. This government, alleging the defeat of our armies, has made contact with the enemy to put an end to the fight. There is no question that we have been, that we are, swamped by the mechanical strength of the enemy on the ground and in the air. Far more than by their numbers, we are thrown back by the tanks, the airplanes, and the strategy of the Germans. It is the tanks, the airplanes, and the strategy of the Germans which surprised our chiefs and brought them to the point where they are today. But has the last word been said? Has the last word been said? Is all hope gone? Is the defeat final? No. Believe me, for I speak to you with full knowledge of what I say. I tell you that nothing is lost for France. The very same means that conquered us can be used to give us one day the victory. For France is not alone. She is not alone. She has a vast empire behind her. She can form a coalition with the British Empire, which holds the seas and is continuing the struggle. She can, like England, have limitless access to the immense industrial powers of the United States. This war is not limited to the territory of our unhappy land. This war was not decided by the Battle of France. This war is a world war. All our mistakes, all our delays, all our suffering do not alter the fact that there exist in the world all the means needed to crush our enemies someday. Although we are today crushed by mechanical force, we can in the future conquer through superior mechanical force. Therein lies the destiny of the world. I, General de Gaulle, speaking from London, invite the French officers and soldiers who may be in British territory, now or at a later date, with their arms or without their arms. I invite the engineers and the workers skilled in the manufacture of armaments, who may be now or in the future on British soil, to get in touch with me. Whatever may come, the flame of French resistance must never be extinguished, and it will not be extinguished. So, actually, de Gaulle went to the BBC studio and recorded that address. And then, unbeknownst to him, the British cabinet was worried and considered preventing the BBC from broadcasting for fear that it might somehow involve use of the French fleet by the Germans. I mean, France had the second fleet after the British, and the British were extremely worried lest the Germans get the use of that fleet. So the cabinet delayed the broadcast while they discussed that. And then eventually the 4-minute speech was broadcast on the 16th, several times the next day. And then he went on the radio day after day with short addresses, carrying on from that one.
Tony, would you please repeat the title and the year of the speech?
Well, it doesn't really have a title, but the French call it the Appeal of June 18th, 1940. So, de Gaulle's speech of June 18th, 1940, or the Appeal of June 18th, 1940. And you can we have given you in the chat a transcript of it, but you can find it all over the web if you just look up de Gaulle, June 18th. So June 18th, 1940. The first of many, of course. In a later speech from London, he made many, as I said, but in a later speech from London, de Gaulle said, "France is like a boxer floored by a terrific punch. She is down for the count, but she knows, she feels that life still beats strong and deep within her. She knows, she feels that the fight is not over, that the cause is not given up." So the effort was long and complicated. It was very slow and difficult at first. People who should have joined him were too numbed to stand up. Typical of this is that, as I discussed earlier, de Gaulle and Reynaud were saying the government has got to go to Algiers, go to North Africa, continue the struggle. That's what we have to do. But, Reynaud just couldn't get that through. He finally resigned after Paris was given up to the Germans. And many of the people he was pleading with at that time in subsequent days tried themselves to make their way to Algeria to continue the struggle. George Mondel, many others, but they were all arrested on the way. So it was a very slow path at first. Effectively, de Gaulle also had to overcome the qualms of Franklin Roosevelt, something I was discussing with Keisha before the call began. Franklin Roosevelt saw in de Gaulle a royalist, a Catholic royalist of an old French tradition, and not a Democrat in Roosevelt's sense at all. And Roosevelt thought surely this wasn't the most appropriate representation for the French people. There must be somebody else. But everybody he tried to put forward into such a role failed, and de Gaulle stood forth as the one representative of all Frenchmen, really, Catholic and royalist though he may have been. He represented them all, of all factions. So there were many obstacles, many struggles through Africa, in France itself, the French resistance. And more than anything else, is something which, we feel today in the Trump movement, or more particularly in the Republican Party, which is not exactly the same thing as the Trump movement, where we have here in Michigan, but I know very, elsewhere throughout the country, a tremendous factionalization and inner turmoil and struggling of factions within the Republican Party who should be all locking arms to put Trump into the White House, but instead of fighting with each other. And de Gaulle found the same thing throughout, especially France, during the war, and he had to overcome it. But de Gaulle won in spite of all, and Free France shared in the victory of the Allies, as he had said it must, and the 14th centuries of French sovereignty, which de Gaulle cited, were resumed when de Gaulle marched down the Champs-Élysées in Paris on August 26, 1944. But that, admittedly, I've told you little about that long and bloody and toilsome struggle. But I think in today's format, there's limits to what I can say. But I want to take another aspect of it, which is where I began tonight, which is the emotional bond that my friend pointed to between President Trump and the American people. And I have the benefit of a little 1941 book by Philippe Barrès called Charles de Gaulle, who collects the tributes, the letters, the statements of Frenchmen and Frenchwomen, especially from France, to de Gaulle. He says, a mother wrote from Nîmes in southern France, August 8th, 1940. She said, thus we still have a little pride in being French while waiting to avenge ourselves. Another mother wrote at the same time, we have not given birth to our sons for them to become Boche. Similarly, that from women. Another Frenchman. Now, well, I should say, to General, again from London, later in 1940, de Gaulle said to the French on BBC, from January 1st, 1941, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the unoccupied zone, there were two zones in France, unoccupied and so-called free, but was really under dictatorship of Vichy. On January 1st, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the unoccupied zone, and from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in occupied France, you will remain at home to celebrate the hour of hope. So a Frenchman who took part in that hour of hope expressed his debt to General de Gaulle in a letter posted to the United States. General, I can at last hope to be able to transmit this letter to you today, written so many times in my thoughts since June 1940. The sole comfort of the French, crushed, despairing, humiliated a little more every day by the abasement of their country, is to hear the London broadcasts and your voice. Today, we religiously observed your orders, and during the hour of hope, as during every minute of the day, we blessed you, General, you who saved our honor. And we prayed God that he would protect England and save France. We live in the hope of serving you soon. and a patriot writes from the occupied zone in the west of France, General de Gaulle. In an hour when every Frenchman conscious of his duty must show his consciousness in a mute fashion, we, 100% French household, ruined by 2 wars and deprived of our children, are with you in thought. How confident we are. In you, in the Frenchmen who are on your side, and in the English. If we could only do as you are doing, instead of appeasing the invader. But we are strong and we are resisting. After our hour of meditation, we watch the scoundrels go by while we sing, "It's a long way to Tipperary," sip a dry gin, and smoke Players. I guess people may know, Players is a British cigarette, which was also de Gaulle's brand. So this is the Republic. The Republic exists first and last in the mind and heart of an individual man or woman before it exists anyplace else. And that, in my view, is the nature of this deep emotional bond, as my friend said, which unites every American with President Trump. So that's what I had to say, and I'd love to hear discussion.